Everybody has creative potential, and everybody can contribute to a beautiful world. I think the world should be a piece of art, and everybody should contribute to that and be aware that they can actually provide a service to the common good.
Hey, listeners, and welcome back to Beyond the Palette, my little corner of the podcast world. I'm your host, Whitney Rosenson, owner of Art Dimensions, your one-stop shop for fine contemporary art leasing and sales. Today I have Marco Schmidli with me. He's a painter from the Art Dimensions roster. But not only is Marco a painter, a fantastic painter, but he also founded Schmidli Backdrops, which operates here in Los Angeles. The Backdrops business creates awe-inspiring backdrops, which you can see in celebrity portraits, music videos, commercials, TV shows, and feature films. So let's dive in. Hi, Marco. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
Thank you for being here. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you.
Good, good. Well, I know how busy you are, so thank you for taking the time for me today. For those listeners who don't know who you are, can you give us a brief snapshot of your journey to where you are today? And that can include schooling or where you're from or...
So I was born in Basel, Switzerland in 1952. And I went to art school in Switzerland. Then I studied photography. I did an apprenticeship for 3 years, but I always wanted to be a painter. That was just the only alternative that actually get me a degree. So I did photography. But then after 2 years as working as a photographer, I went back to art school, studied painting and sculpting. And I was actually very much interested in sculpting. But then that became a bit too complicated. And I think of myself as a sculptor who paints, a painting. And then I was in art school. And after that, I got a prize to go to the Swiss Institute in Rome. So I was there for 2 years with scholarships in Rome. And after Rome, I went back to Switzerland, but not to Basel, but to Zurich. And in Zurich, I did another 2 years in photography and film in Zurich, in the school there. And then I was pretty much more or less a starving artist in Zurich till I came to America in '89. I always supported myself with some photography jobs and all kinds of art jobs to do my art. But I was not very pushy with showing my art. I was more just interested in doing it and experimenting and so. But then when I came to America, I became more pragmatic. Mm-hmm. I actually came to America as a tour guide. It was just an opportunity for me to get out of Zurich and but then they fired me after 3 months. I was not really a tour guide material. So then I was hanging out in San Francisco, assisting photographers. And that's when a photographer asked me to paint some backdrops for him for a job. And that's how that's how I got into doing backdrops. Okay. And I saw the opportunity and I liked doing it. So in San Francisco, I did mainly smaller things for product shots. And then usually I did always 3, it was mainly custom work there. And usually I did, when somebody needed something, I did more than one backdrop or, I did usually 3, so they would have a choice.
Just one, yeah.
And it was easier for me to work like that. Kept me more free doing variations. And then I ended up with a lot of backdrops, more and more backdrops. And then I did a catalog. small improvised catalog. And then at some point, after 2 years in San Francisco, I came down to LA because there's a bigger market. But I also always did my personal art on the side. And it was funny, it would bounce back and forth between backdrops and personal art. I would learn a lot with doing backdrops that I would apply in my art. And out of the art, there was inspiration for backdrops. So it was a nice balance between.
A nice marriage, yeah.
Yeah.
When did you open Schmidli Backdrops?
I pretty much started in San Francisco, I would say in 89, but then it became really more, professional here in San Francisco. Like I would say in 92, it was after the earthquake.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so I love LA and everything is really doing good. I'm very grateful.
Let me ask you, you mentioned that the backdrops and the personal art, we said that that's such a nice marriage, and you said one sort of lends itself to the other. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Often when I did a backdrop and sometimes a custom backdrop, I felt, wow, this would be a great piece of art, but it was too strong as a background. And I often had to kind of destroy something that I would have liked to keep as a piece of art. And then I came across new ways of applying paint and working with paint and techniques and tricks, if you want, and that I then kept aside on the back burner. And I have to say, I still have lots of stuff on the back burner, and I feel like I'm a dam. I have all these ideas or experiences stamped in and now I'm really ready to, because I started really this year or the last 2 years maybe to really full time mainly to do art, because I always wanted to focus on the commercial backdrops. And I'm really happy that I can use my art to provide the service, because I always I never really liked the art market too much. I didn't really was the person to run around and try to promote my art. Yeah. And I really love that I have this outlet where I have, where I provide something like a service. And that ties into my problem that I have with being an artist. Because when people ask me, are you an artist? I don't like this title because, I think everybody's an artist. Everybody has creative potential and everybody can contribute to a beautiful world. I think the world should be a piece of art, and everybody should contribute to that and be aware that they can actually provide the service to the common good.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So there's a question I want to ask. Do you think, but you sort of just answered it, do you think creativity is something you're born with or something you're taught?
I had no idea about art because my parents were so very simple people. They were really loving and all, but they didn't know art. They didn't know. I was lucky. I had a good teacher who got me into the art school in Basel and helped me with putting together a portfolio. I actually had two teachers who both wanted me to go a different route. One was the teacher that we had in handiwork, metalwork, woodwork, and that guy wanted me to be a tool and die maker, like a fine mechanic, because he was impressed by my precision with my hands. And then the other teacher wanted me to go to art school, and I liked that teacher better. So I followed his advice, and I got into art school.
So for you, maybe it was taught, but do you feel that people are born as creative types?
Obviously, that teacher saw some talent, because I always both of those teachers liked that I always liked to have a product. In school, I was not really much of a paper chaser. I like to have a product. I was always good in producing something, a piece of art or metalwork or woodwork. For a long time, I was into kite making when I was a child. Flying kites was a really big thing for me. Somehow, I don't know what it was about it, but I love to do something with my hands more than, doing something intellectually. I mean,
Okay.
I like to read books and all that stuff, but for me, that was what I also was dyslexic, so I had a hard time reading and writing. So for me, I almost had no other choice than become an artist. It was not like, oh, okay, I have all these choices.
Right.
I was not very self-assured, because of my dyslexia. I felt like I was a bit insecure. And so art was a good way of, having a good image still and being poor, maybe, or something. It was like a bit of, maybe also an escape from the hard reality of reality, because even as a photographer, I didn't like when clients were on my back, and I felt always a bit insecure when people were around when I was working.
So what's your favorite aspect about, I'm going to call you an artist right now. What is your favorite aspect of being an artist?
The favorite thing is I'm totally free. I don't, like I said, I paint in my studio. I have my assistant, and I have an infrastructure, and it's very easy for me to come up with backdrops or art, and I have no client in my back. No stress, because
Good.
I'm free to create and experiment. I feel like I'm more like a scientist than a painter, an artist. I experiment. And it's not that I have a fixed idea when I go into painting. It's more like I want to be surprised about the outcome. I create a framework. It's usually process-based what I do, and then often the outcome is a surprise, and that's what I like. I like to be surprised by what the outcome is, rather than have a fixed idea.
Do you use acrylic or you use oil?
I use acrylic mainly because I'm also working very big. I mean, for my backdrops, the standard size is 12 by 20 feet. I have bigger stuff and smaller stuff. So I'm used to work big, and I like to work big in my art too. So I cannot really I use sometimes oil for smaller stuff at home.
Okay.
But it's the smell and the drying time is
Yes.
kind of complicated. And acrylics got so good over the last decades. And I have Nova Color right next to my studio, which is, they produce the best acrylics all over. A Nova Color.
Where is your studio, or where is Schmidli Backdrops?
It's on Fairfax and Adams,
Okay.
Culver City.
And I want to mention that your website, you can see Marco's paintings obviously at artdimensionsonline.com, but also at schmidli.com, which is schmidli.com.
That's right.
And Schmidli Backdrops it's a facility where you actually make the backdrops.
That's right.
Mostly large. Where can people see the backdrops? On magazine covers, on video?
Yes, there are many of my backdrops in magazines, and I have a portfolio online too on my website where people can see what the photographers are doing with my backdrops. And yeah, they're all over the place. I mean, they're music videos. There are
cool.
Lots of things.
So cool. What do you hope people? Let's talk about your painting. Go to your personal art for a moment.
Yes.
What do you hope people will get from your creations? Like, what do you hope that they'll walk away with after looking at your paintings? Or what do you hope they will get from the paintings?
For me, what I like about my paintings is there's a lot of interesting details, and I can look at them, and I see things, and I just like to look at it, and for me, it's just the visual thing, somehow the beauty of the texture. It's mainly texture that I do anyway,
Right.
and structures, and it's
It's abstract. I want everyone to know that it's
abstract.
abstract.
Yeah.
How do you get the texture?
Oh yeah, there I have many tricks, and that's I cannot even start to explain how I do all this. And sometimes I don't even know anymore how I did it afterwards because I'm in the flow and then I react to what happens. And it happened, it's more like it happens to me. I feel like almost like a funnel, and things come to me and I just let it happen.
They come through you. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Marco, who are some of your greatest influences?
Yes, starting with that one teacher who was also an artist who really helped me to go on the right path. But then, of course, there are many artists that I like. What I really like is artists that really surprise me, and you don't know where they're coming from. They come from another planet. And you have some examples in music, like David Bowie, but in the art world, there's this Neo Rausch, or Neo Rauch, German guy, kind of surrealistic. When I look at his work, I cannot follow how does he come up with this? Where does it come from? Because most art I can understand where it comes from. Okay, this is done, and this where it comes from. And then, of course, there is Michel Basquiat, which is another one that comes from another planet. That you just blows my mind. Where is he coming from? It's like there's no history to where he comes from. I mean, I cannot. I don't understand where he comes from, and that's for me fantastic. I love that.
It's
But then
fantastic.
but then you have other artists that I like. I like Kai Twombly very much. I like Gerhard Richter.
Mm-hmm.
I have a list of people that I like, of course.
I'm wondering if you went to the Basquiat exhibit downtown. Did you see
I missed that actually, unfortunately. I'm so bad with going to art shows. I missed that, yeah. But I know his work. I saw it in many different other places.
Yeah, of course. It was just wow.
A great show, yeah.
I was blown away. Blown away.
Yeah,
I mean, these were, it was beautiful. Do you ever get painter's block?
People ask that. They ask, how do you get inspired? Or, yeah, and all that. And for me, it's just about showing up, really. Discipline. I go there, I start something, and I never really have a problem with coming up with anything new. And it's always, yeah, no, I don't know that. I don't know painter's block.
That's awesome.
I don't have that problem.
That's lucky.
I have the opposite problem. I don't have enough time to create everything that I have that I want to do, and experiment all the things I want to, experiment with. And like I said, coming from the backdrop experience, there's a ton of stuff that's, I feel like I'm like a bow and arrow, like you stretch and I'm ready to shoot. I have all this stuff that I want to let out.
Yeah,
that's like stowed up somewhere.
So, what are you working on in your studio? Personally, are you working on anything these days, like a new series or a painting that you want to tell us about?
Yeah, it's funny now with all this rain and I started to work on all small stuff. I have this paper size that I use to make color tests for my backdrops or for my art, and to try the color and see what how it looks like. So I always collected those because they were so randomly, without ambition. It was just something I did to a part of the work. So I collected them, and I had like about 300 of those papers over the 30 years.
Oh, wow.
And then I had my assistant gluing them on a board. And I went in there and worked with them, overworked them, and worked, like just played with them. And that's what I did for the last, the whole winter, actually, pretty much. So I have about 300 now paintings, small paintings that I did like that.
Are they online for people to see or not?
We are working on uploading them. Yeah, they are in the small section there with, you can look by size into the art and then.
Right.
But there's still a bunch that my assistant is shooting and uploading. That's not yet uploaded.
That's a lot.
So and I'm still working on them, even though I want to finish that and get back to bigger work because. And go, but it's nice. I can work up at home here. I have a home studio where I do these things. But I'm ready to go back now that the weather is great because we work outside in my studio. So those are the paint.
Yeah.
I like to work down there. I have my assistant. I have the infrastructure stuff that I cannot do here. But
okay,
yeah,
I can't wait to see those. I don't know if he'll show me all 300, but I would really like to see the paper pieces. So my last question for you is just a fun question. If you were granted $1 million for an art project, what would you do?
I have some ideas for big sculptures. So I would do a huge sculpture that's actually where people actually can walk into. Mm-hmm. And I like inside spaces because I still have this memory of the cave that I went to when I was a boy in Switzerland. It's a huge cave with about 60 miles of cave. And we were there a few days in there, and there were all these different shapes in there, and amazing. I mean, for an architect, that's the best experience. Like domes, huge domes, and that's it was just. So I want to create something like
that,
like an inside space that would be similar to what I experienced there. So I have this drawings. I know exactly what I would do and how I would do it with $1 million. Yeah.
Very cool. Is it open to the public in Switzerland?
It is, but only in the winter because in the summer there's water flowing through the cave. Okay. So yeah, very only nice. In the winter, yes.
All right. How do your emotions affect your paintings?
Yeah, that's a funny question. I get that often. Emotions. I don't trust emotions much. I think it's mainly produced by the brain anyway, by thinking. And then the emotions set in. So actually, for me, I try not to. For me, emotions are not that important. Actually, in my art, I leave the emotions to the spectator, to the consumer of my art. For me, it's really more like scientific, and I like paint. I like paintings, but yeah, some paintings when I see them, I have it gives me an emotional reaction. But in my own art, it's more like, I'm very scientific, not much emotions, actually.
Okay. Yes. I haven't heard that before. That's so interesting. Marco, this was really fantastic. Thank you for guesting on Beyond the Palette today.
Thank you.
Let me just add some administration. So listeners, you can take a look at Marco's exquisite paintings at artdimensionsonline.com. Also, his site, once again, is schmidli.com, schmidli.com. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, Marco Schmidli Art, and at Schmidli Backdrops. And then there's also at Art Dimensions as well. So, Marco, thank you so much for being a guest on the show today. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. So to all the listeners out there listening, and to Marco, I hope you all have an inspiring week and happy creating.